Okay, today we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about Topps history, part two, but we're going to talk about the fun of collecting. We're going to discuss the novelty of the Topps cards, teammates and superstar pairings, and the best in word card designs. So one of the things that Topps was able to do over the years, especially from 1952 to at least 2000, was to include cards that made the sets interesting, above and beyond just having the players and the stars and the rookies. They had lots of kind of interesting cards. And one of those cards was the action cards. And so in certain decks, they even called them in action, or we have Clemente and we have Fisk here, kind of exciting action. And then they did a series on Turn Back the Clock where they kind of featured cards that were from the past and talked the history of those players. Carl Yastrzemski being one that was talked about on two cards. And then you had tributes to certainly Babe Ruth, as well as Aaron and Pete Rose. And then you had super veterans. So you had Johnny Bench as a player, as a young player, and then as a player about to retire. You also had many highlight cards, which kind of kept you abreast of what was going on and who was making history in the field of baseball. Certainly Nolan Ryan constantly appeared on these particular cards because of his numerous no-hitters and an incredible extension of his career and wins and so forth. And then there was the record breakers, and certainly one of the key ones was Ricky Henderson in the base stealing. And then the golden moments in terms of the player's success, and even what they call headlines. Here we have Vic tells father time to grab a bat, Minnie Minoso, who was very old when he kind of came back to play. Then we even have kind of peculiar cards, the commissioner of baseball, the presidents of baseball, Bart Giamatti, and then we have several managers and coaches, Casey Stengel, Tom Lasorda, Ralph Houck, then even Pete Rose when he was a manager. Then checklists, and then they weren't just checklists. You could get a checklist and have a picture of Mickey Mantle, and that card would be valuable today because it just included a Mickey Mantle. But the checklist, especially if they were unmarked, and then you had pictures of the entire team, and on the back, a lot of information about that team and the year they played. And then you even had pictures, kind of a wide view of the ballparks that are around this country. There were numerous cards throughout the different years where they featured the MVP players, certainly cards like this of Mantle. And then you had cards that basically put the summary of the players that won the MVP. So you could kind of look back. Then they had the World Series highlights, the Yankees and the Dodgers and the World Series Cubs when they won, and the Boston Red Sox. So kind of a lot of memories that were kind of caught or captured on these baseball cards, certainly to kind of look back on and reflect on. And then one of the most popular cards is league leaders, where they would feature the leaders in home runs, National and American League, the leaders in RBIs, the leaders in batting average, the leaders in strikeouts, the leaders in earned run average, and the leaders in win loss. And so these were cards that they would feature maybe 3 or 5 of the players that were kind of prominent in terms of the leaders that particular year, as well as listing all the others many of the others on the back of the card. So this was kind of exciting to keep track of and see where your favorite player was with regards to hitting or pitching. And then there were batting and pitching leaders for the particular teams, all-time home run leaders. So it wasn't just basically that year, but then looking over the course of time. And then you had stolen bases. And so stolen base leaders were promoted in the cards. And then Cy Young Award winners, and the award itself is even on a card, and certainly a tribute to Cy Young, who the award is named after. And then we had then and now cards, players that what they looked like when they played ball, and then what looked like what they are now. We had brothers, pictures of brothers in the card, pictures of brothers like Ken Brad and George Brad, pictures of fathers and son like the Boones. We had pictures of the players when they were young boys like Tom Seaver. You had add-ons like playing cards, and then you also had the other kind of cards that were insert, scratch off, and pop out cards that were kind of different. And some people actually kind of put them aside and collected them, and it was kind of fun. Uh, and then we get into all of the terminations or terminology of the rookies. So you had all the cards designated as rookie stars, or maybe all-time rookies and the little trophy on the side, or Baltimore Orioles future stars, the whole team who was the future star of that team. And you had USA baseball team, and these were occurred a few years before the players even were up to the professional leagues, like Mark McGwire, 1985. Then you had the first draft picks, and this was sort of Darryl Strawberry. This is a year after he was a rookie, but they put in a card, #1 draft picks. Then you had draft picks like later on with Cliff Chipper Jones and also Derek Jeter. And you had top prospects, players that were potentially going to be stars in the future. And then you even had cards of rookie of the year. So lots of cards kind of focusing on the rookies, prospects, draft picks, and so forth. And then you have the theme cards that are kind of putting players together. I think this is kind of neat because those other cards within all these sets, you could kind of put them together, all the MVPs, all the all-stars, all the league leaders and so forth, and make your own kind of separate sets and have fun with that. But then these cards were kind of like not the most popular in terms of sales, but kind of really fun to collect because the idea of putting two superstars on the same card and their kind of relationship back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and even in the future, is kind of really neat to reflect on. So you had a lot of cards where they kind of put Mickey Mantle with other players. And so we have Mantle and Maris and Cash and K-Line, kind of a real neat combination of hitters. Then you have one of the kind of neatest cards, I think, where you had the superstars, Mantle and Mays together with Harvin Killebrew. And then you had teammates, Mantle with Clete Boyer. I'm sorry, Ken Boyer's brother, more well known. Then you had Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra as teammates. And then you had Mickey Mantle together with Hank Aaron, and Mickey Mantle together with Millie Mays, and Aaron together with his teammate Eddie Matthews, and then Aaron together with Mays. And there's two cards, and it appeared with Aaron and Mays together. And then you had Aaron and Ernie Banks. So that's kind of these superstars of all time, kind of pictured together on a single card, was really neat and very collectible and very affordable because they were the superstars, but yet they wasn't their particular single card. Then you had the same thing. You'll see Mays with Duke Snider. You'll see, as we showed before, Mays with Mantle, and then Mays with Ashburn. It's kind of both Hall of Famers. We talked about Mays and Aaron. And you have Mays with his teammate Willie McCovey. That picture with Killebrew and Mantle, and then Willie McCovey with Leon Wagner. And then you have Willie Mays with Orlando Cepeda, and then Willie Mays with Aaron. So kind of a lot of pictures of Willie Mays together with other players, and he's just an all-time great. Then you have the superstars like the Dodgers pitchers, Padres, and Koufax. And then you have the Dodgers sluggers, Campanella, Snyder. And then you have the Dodgers big three in terms of pitching with Padres and Drysdale and Koufax. And then you have the friendly foes. You have Duke Snider and Gil Hodges. Then you have the hitters foes, Drysdale, Levine, and Padres. And then you have Willie McCulley and Juan Marshall teaming up, and Willie McCulley, Leon Wagner. Then you have the Ted Williams with Ted Kluszewski, and Ted Williams with Mike Epstein kind of batting practice when he was a manager of the Washington Senators. And then you have Yastrzemski and Schilling and the Sockers, and you have the two Willie Stargell, Don Clenden, Buck Belters, also Cash and K-Line of the Tigers, and Philly Power, Johnny Callison, Wes Covington, Richie Allen, Johnny Callison, and then the Cardinals, Lou Brock and Kurt Flood. And then you got the Cubs, Banks and Long and Moran. And you got the Cleveland Indians with Minoso and Colavito. And then you've got Colavito and Leon Wagner. You got Baltimore with Frank Robinson and Brooke Robinson. And again, Frank Robinson and Brooke Robinson and Bird Belters. You have Danny Murtaugh and Bill Verdon. You have Lemon, Lavaghetto, and Severs in Washington. You got Ace Hurlers, Pierce and Roberts. You got Kaline and Maxwell and the Tigers. You have the Pirates, Klazuski and the coach Murtaugh, and then Buck Aces, the pitchers, Friends and Law and Face. And then you've got Fox and Aparicio. So almost all the teams were represented in terms of their big star players or franchise players, which kind of made it neat. And then we had old Casey Stengel with his kind of players and kind of being an old kind of teacher and talking with Larson. Larson pitched that no-hitter. And then you have two managers together, Casey Stengel of the Yankees and Fred Henney of the Braves. And then you got Gene Woodling and Casey Stengel at the Mets. Then you have Lou Burdett and Bobby Shantz of the Braves. And you've got Al Downing and Jim Bouton of the Yankees. And then we have in the 88, we start and we have a lot of pairings here, like the Canseco and McGuire. And you also have the Pirate leaders, Bonilla and Bonds. And you have Wally Joyner, and you have Billy Ripken, I'm sorry, Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray, and you have Reynolds and the Mariners. You've got up to date and current with home run halos with Pujols and Trout. And then you've got the combination of Rodriguez and Jeter. And then you've got the Houston pair, Altuve and Carlos. And now we look at the Big Red Machine, where we're kind of looking at historically and nuances with Ken Griffey. And then we had Joe Morgan, Barry Larkin, Johnny Bench. Then you had the fantastic pitching staff together of the Atlanta Braves, where you have Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine. And then you have the big shortstops, Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, Garcia Parra. You have the Killer Bees, certainly with Bagwell. And you also had Biggio. And then you have the combination of Judge and Stanton, and Judge and Stanton again. So all these kind of combinations were just kind of neat to put together and kind of neat to collect, though they may not be kind of so profitable in the future, but who knows? Certainly the older cards will hold their values. Then you have, and this is kind of feedback by a lot of people who have insight into the card industry in terms of design and so forth. So you put all their kind of recommendations together and you get kind of an outcome of what were considered the best design of all these top cards over the years. And you might disagree, you might find others, but this is kind of how they're ranked. So the 1959 tops, then you have the 1970s, the 1975, which was sort of the colorful or one of the most colorful cards. Then you have the 1956 cards, and then there's 1986, and you have the 1960s, the 1972, 1973, 1953, and the 1952. So these were about the 10 to 11 cards that were considered the best designs. But then it goes to the next level, and you have the 64, the 58, the 63, 65. This is one of my favorites for whatever reason. Maybe it was the year that I was kind of a young child and really got into collecting, but it's kind of a favorite. The 1982, the 1962, the 84, the 85, 69, the 83, the 87, and the 81. Those were kind of the top designs, and these were by some of these people who have a input considered them the weakest designs of the top arrows, and that was the 76, the 78, the 79, the 74, the 88, and the 67, the 58, the 61, the 55, the 54, and the 67. So again, it's all a matter of opinion, but it gives you kind of an overview of the different styles of the cards, and kind of people can really relate and almost kind of look at the card and just by the card know exactly what year it is and what players were good. And that was a big part of the collecting, and kind of brings back memories for people who just kind of can go over these particular cards. So these are the updates in terms of the newer cards. But what you're going to find is they don't have that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling. They're very much action, and apparently that's what sells, and so that's what it's kind of reverted to. But you don't really see the faces. A lot of these pictures, you're kind of barely able to make out who the player is, and if you kind of ever saw them in person, you wouldn't know them from the card, or they're very much action. But that's the trend, and then it gets really kind of really colorful and fancy. But again, it's not really this kind of personal. It's all in action and so forth of the cards, which is apparently what sells. But yet you can see kind of the difference between the earlier cards and the newer cards. And people can't really relate to this card is that year or this year or that star or whatever, because there's so many cards and so many different combinations of the design of the cards. So as of 1989, though this was the junk card era, during that period, though, the card industry was doing fantastic. The hobby was booming, and interest in nostalgia memorabilia was rampant. So not only were the new cards being bought up as kind of a investment, but the old cards were basically kind of revisited, and maybe a lot of the people who were younger that didn't keep their cards and wanted to kind of renew their childhood were buying them up. So several things were taking place during this period, that the shell Bowman, which hadn't been really on the market since 1955, or basically was released again in 1989. So Bowman started again. And then Topps magazine was tracking minor leaguers and rookies. So this whole craze about the rookie cards was becoming fanatical. And there was even many publications that you could kind of track these players long before they got into the big leagues to project what cards to purchase so that you could invest in many of them at that time. There was also the out of all these premium brands. In 1991 was this incredible one by Topps called Stadium Club. And by this time, 1992, there were changes where they're eliminating gum because people were into collecting. So the gum left a stain on the card. So no one was eating the gum. So let's get rid of the cards. They started white card stock, or a better quality of card. And they were sealing the cards in plastic wrappers versus wax, because again, you were kind of wanting to protect these cards, and the wax sometimes went and made the top and bottom card less valuable in terms of grading. And then not only did it go from the Stadium Club, but then in 1993, you had a super premium Topps Finest, which these cards today are even worth a lot more, but they cost a lot more when they were purchased in 1993. So the idea of this was to kind of look at beyond just the player cards and look at all the combinations and themes and different unique cards that within the sets could be made into sets and could make collecting fun. So if you are interested in learning additional information about the baseball card manufacturers, as well as collecting cards for fun and profit, be sure to follow us below. And you can hit the subscribe button, as well as feel free to view our library of YouTube videos. Also, check out our eBay store, where we have available for sale many of the cards shown on these videos. So have a great day and take the rest of the day off, and we'll talk later.